Your brain does amazing things. As you age, it changes, becomes better at some things like emotional understanding and accumulating knowledge and facts about the world. But other things might become more challenging, like remembering where you put your keys or why you walked into a room. The rate at which we process information can also slow down, but there are things you can do to help your brain stay healthy for a long time. Well, welcome. I'm Tony St. James. Welcome to this edition of Rural America Live with AARP. You know, our brain is always changing. No matter our age, we get stronger in some areas and, well, worse in others. But tonight, we're sharing tips and tricks on how to keep your brain in good shape as you age. Along with our friends from AARP, Dr. Dane Chekovich, Head of Neurology at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, will be here to answer your questions and offer advice on how to keep the brain healthy and when we should start worrying about memory problems. All right, our question of the month. Have you had a moment when you experienced a memory lapse? We're giving away a carry-all tote to 5 lucky on-air callers. All right, so pick up the phone, join our conversation. We're wasting no time in taking your calls, and the phone lines are open. So give us a call, 877-283-7570, 877-283-7570. Now, you don't need to be a member of AARP, don't need to be 50 or older to win. And as a reminder, you can win only once each calendar year. If you're a past winner and you've not received your tote, be sure to return the AARP volunteers call and provide an address. And just so you know, AARP pays all shipping costs. Now, if you're not a lucky winner tonight, don't worry, you can enter AARP's Second Chance Sweepstakes at aarp.org/AARP Live, or scan the QR code on your screen to enter. One carry-all tote will be given away each month, with the winner announced during next month's program. Rules apply, and you can only win once in a calendar year. We'll announce August Second Chance winner later in tonight's show. All right, phone lines are open right now, so give us a call, 877-283-7570, and join the conversation. We're ready to take your call. All right, I want to welcome our friends to Rural America Live. Kathy McLear is director for AARP Minnesota, and Greg Marshallden is director for AARP Vermont. Welcome.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. And welcome to you, your first time with AARP Live.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. You know, let's talk about the brain. It's fascinating, it's complex, and it's why neurologist Dr. Chekovich, neurologist chairman at Vanderbilt, is going to join us a little later to answer the more in-depth aspects of how things really work. But I know that AARP does a lot around brain health and focuses mostly on ways to keep our brain healthy as we age. So, Kathy, let's start with you. What are some myth busters? You know, we hear these things. Hey, these are good things to keep in mind for our aging brains. But what are some of those myth busters?
Yeah, well, there certainly are a lot of myths out there. And, you know, a lot of the questions and calls and inquiries that AARP gets is around how to stay sharp as we age and how to age well, right? How to get the most out of life as we age. So let's talk about some of those myths, right? We have a really wonderful brain health resource center. We do a lot of research. We work with experts on how to keep your brain healthy and what can be bad for the brain and the positive things you can do for your brain power. But talking about those myths, the brain is hardwired to decline with age. That is false. The brain can change and adapt and continues throughout your lifespan. And so certainly while some of those skills might decline, others can improve. the nerve cells in our brain's hippocampus, and I'm sure our fine doctor will talk more about that later, but it's the important part of the brain for learning and memory, and that can keep growing well into a person's 70s, even 80s or beyond. And so that one is false. So myth number 2, diet and exercise don't do much for the brain. Well, that's also false. Habits that are good for your heart are good for the brain too, our research shows. For example, eating a Mediterranean diet, which is heavy on fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, olive oil, and light on the red meat, that may protect against those cognitive declines as well as protect against heart disease and diabetes. So that is a win-win-win, a triple win. And then the third myth I want to talk about is doing brain games will slow your mental decline. That's probably what most folks have heard. Do some games, play Sudoku, play word puzzles. Well, they are very popular, but the evidence shows that they really don't, or maybe there's a weak link between battling that risk of dementia. Our AARP's Global Council on Brain Health said, yeah, that may be false, but it doesn't mean they're a waste of time. They may sharpen some of your skills, and I think the important thing is don't play the same game all the time, play a different game. So if you're a Sudoku player, maybe you play some word games and change things up. Something that's going to stimulate your brain to make some of those new connections, and it's a fun diversion.
I love that. You know, I'll admit I didn't know that the brain game, so I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, Greg, let's get you into this as well. Mentioned earlier that there are healthy things that you can do to keep your brain sharp. I'm just wondering what they are, and can we work those into our daily routine?
Oh, yeah, and that's exactly what you can do and should be doing. There are things that even young people should be doing now. The point here is that you want to start to get some good habits. So after the while, it just becomes a habit, and then you're sticking with it over time. So we have 6 healthy habits that can make a big difference in keeping your brain active, engaged, and stronger as you age. And I'm sure Dr. Chekovich will have some more ideas for us as we get further into the program. But let's start with these tips from our Brain Resource Center at AARP. Stay socially active. Keep in touch with friends and family, and join social activities is really important. We're going to go to engage your brain, explore new interests, and pick mental activities that you enjoy. This is really, really important as well. You also want to manage your stress. Stress is a really complicated problem for all sorts of health reasons. So plan a daily schedule to promote calmness. And a really important thing is laughter can help reduce stress. Exercise. We hear it all the time. Pick activities that you can enjoy, and aerobic activities, things like walking, things like running, strength training, all of those things can make a huge difference. Restful sleep. You hear people talk about sleep all the time, how important it is. Make sleep and good sleep a priority. And as our brain center will tell you, save your worries for while you're awake. Don't take them to bed with you. And finally, eat healthy foods. This is really important. Go light on the salt. There's a lot of research here around salt could potentially have a negative impact in this area. And avoid sugary and processed foods. So if you want to have a bag of chips on a Monday, skip it for 4 or 5 days maybe before you have another one. So really monitor the processed foods.
So much to really talk about tonight. And we want to make sure that it's not just us talking.
That's right.
We want to make sure we get to your calls, but we need to take a quick break. And when we come back, Dr. Dane Chekovich, urology chairman at Vanderbilt, will be here to take your calls and answer your questions. And we have carry-all totes to give away to 5 lucky on-air callers. We want you to join the conversation. Give us a call, 877-283-7570. 877-283-7570. We'll be right back.
Music can amp up creativity, bring down stress levels, enhance your mood, help you sleep, and connect you to others. Music can change your brain physically. It changes the release of dopamine and serotonin, the feel-good chemicals of joy. It can help to cultivate a sense of purpose, and some research suggests that it can improve memory and language skills. So go for it. Sing in the shower, take guitar lessons, learn how to drum, dance. It's a bright, tuneful world. Find out more about your brain on music at stayingsharp.org/music.
Too much salt and fats and lack of exercise aren't the only things that are bad for your heart. Here are 2 surprising things that can cause high blood pressure and stress to your heart muscle. Sleep apnea. When a person with sleep apnea stops breathing, the brain steps in and wakes the body up to take a breath, which is very hard on the vascular system. A common warning sign of sleep apnea is snoring. So if someone tells you that you snore loudly or gasp often while you're sleeping, it may warrant a discussion with your healthcare provider. Black licorice. Yes, black licorice made from licorice root can be a health hazard, and not just because of its sugar content. The candy contains a compound that can cause the body to hold on to lots of salt and water, thereby driving blood pressure up. Eating just 2 ounces a day for at least 2 weeks could land adults 40 and older in the hospital. For more health tips, go to aarp.org/health.
Welcome back to Rural America Live with AARP. Well, we've got a great show for you tonight. And as we work our way through, we've got Vanderbilt Medical Center's neurology chairman, Dr. Dane Chekovich, joining us to answer your brain health questions. Along with our friends from AARP, we want to hear from you as well. Phone lines are open. Pick up your phone right now. Give us a call at 877-283-7575. Lucky on-air callers will win a carry-all tote, so give us a call. You could be a winner. 877-283-7570. Now, if you're not a lucky winner tonight, don't worry. You can still enter AARP's Second Chance Sweepstakes. AARP.org/AARP Live, or scan the QR code on your screen to enter one tote we'll be giving away each month, with the winner announced during next month's program. And by the way, we'll announce last month's winner a little later in the show. Okay, I'm here with our friends from AARP, Kathy McClear and Greg Marshallden, and joining us now is Dr. Dane Chekovich, who is neurology chairman at Vanderbilt Medical Center. Welcome to the show. It's so good to meet you and have you here. We had a chance to talk before we came in. I'm just kind of curious, what led you into neurology?
Well, I've always found the brain to be very interesting. And when I was an undergraduate student in Texas, I started studying how the brain cells talk to each other. Our brains are filled with millions and millions of cells that are really important for all the things that we do, all of our memories, all of our actions, all the sensations that we have for the world around us. And I was really interested in how those little tiny cells talk to each other and form connections in order to make us who we are. And so I stuck with it and became a neurologist, and now I treat patients who have problems with those cells talking to each other.
I'm just wondering if there's some kind of a distinction, because we'll forget things, forget why I walked into a room, or maybe I'll forget where I laid my phone or whatever. But I just wonder if there's any correlation or distinction, if you will, between forgetfulness and maybe cognitive decline. And, are there some obvious signs that there might be a more serious issue?
Well, yes, there are. And I think really the warning signs of when memory problems are a signal of underlying brain problems are when there's a real change from prior. So it's when those memory lapses are causing issues that may be safety concerns, such as leaving the car running, leaving the water running, leaving the stove or oven on, getting lost, the kinds of things that if they persist, might cause injury to you or to others.
Okay. Let's not have all the questions come from me. So let's go to the phones. Paul from Louisiana. Paul, you have a question?
Good evening. I sure do. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm 73 years old, and I'm still very active. And I was wondering, in the exercise program, if reading and gathering information and staying active that way is a good way to prevent from going in the loss of memory direction.
It's a good one.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it sounds like you're doing all the right things. Really, physical activity is crucially important, and the studies show that about 150 minutes per week can reduce the risk of dementia and memory loss. So that physical exercise, especially if it is aerobic, it's really great. So I'm glad that you're remaining active and physically active, especially. Reading, yes, absolutely, especially reading that makes you think and makes you have new thoughts. That's super critical as well. And one of the things about reading and about reading and about exercise is doing it with others is really important.
Okay, great question. How about we do another call? And guess what? It's a winner.
We got a winner?
It's a winner.
We like winners.
Yeah,
like our
from
winners.
California, it's Kim. Not only are you a winner, Kim, but I'm sure you've got a great question for us too.
I hope I do. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yay. So my question is about stress. And I've been to a neurologist twice now, once in 2022 after being diagnosed with a couple of physical issues. And they suggested that maybe I was under a lot of stress and that I should come back in a year. And I was real busy doing other things and didn't, but I went this year. And they looked at the records and said, oh, you've gotten a little better in this area, a little better in this area, but my memory's gotten worse. And it's a little bit scary. And I'm doing a lot of the things on your list. So I've started a painting party with some friends where I used to be a teacher. And so I try to help either teach a lesson or have somebody in our group teach a lesson. So we're learning a new painting technique or art technique. So that's something I thought was really helping. I can't really do a lot of exercise right now because I have some physical issues, and I'm worried that might be the one little thing that I'm not doing. And I have sleep apnea, so I've got a face mask, and I've done all the studies and everything else. The question about stress management is that I have to keep on top of my health as far as these other things that are going on, and I've got everything written down. I write down all my appointments and everything else. But can you recommend certain apps on the phone or other things that can help us reduce our stress that are things we can do every single day very easily without including physical exercise?
Great question, Kim.
Well, I think the answer is yes. There are a lot of things that you can do when you feel stressed. There are some apps on the phone that might help with that as well. They're mindfulness apps. I think that there are a lot of resources at AARP as well. So I would talk to your primary care doctor or to your neurologist about the ideas that they might have. But there are a lot of things out there.
So as Kim talked about, as we age, sometimes you might have some arthritis. It might be a little harder to, do the really hardcore workouts that maybe we did when we were far younger. Does walking help? I mean, even just getting a few minutes of walking or maybe some gentle yoga, can that help as well?
Yes, absolutely. So walking and yoga and Pilates, which doesn't have a lot of joint stress, I think that those are all good things. Just the really important the really important factor is focusing your brain on moving the body and maintaining positions in a certain way. I think that those themselves can be very helpful to the brain, to train the brain and to strengthen the connections that we've got.
Okay, I live on the 5th floor, so maybe I need to start taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Simple thing, right?
Absolutely.
All right. How about another call? We'll go back to Louisiana and Rodney. Hi, Rodney.
How we doing?
Never better. Hey, thanks for calling. What's your question?
My question is, what makes a person repeat themselves 2 or 3 times during a conversation?
That's another great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. So with memory issues, one of the very first areas that we see problems is short-term memory. And so with short-term memory problems, a person might ask a question or tell a story and then get to a pause in that conversation, or there may be an exchange with the spouse or whoever they're talking to, and enough, it may even be just a few seconds, but they might have forgotten that they told the story or asked the question. So they might repeat that story or repeat that question again and again. So that can be a sign of memory difficulty. Short-term memory loss is one of the very first things affected in patients who have cognitive impairment from.
Yeah, another thing that I think I hear it sometimes, Greg, people, like, they grasp for a word. They can't think of the word that they're meaning to use. I find that it happens to me sometimes. Is that something to be super concerned about, or is that just something that happens to everybody from time to time?
Well, word finding difficulty is really common, and things like poor sleep, stress, there are a lot of things that can impact whether or not we can find words. But if it's a persistent issue, and if a person is really having difficulty finding words, that can be a sign of dementia.
We've got some great calls already. Let's go back. Well, let's go to Minnesota and George. And George, before you ask your question, congratulations, you're a winner. But how about your question, George?
My question is, my wife has been diagnosed with early signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. We've been to the Rand Clinic here in Minneapolis, and also had a second opinion at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. So it is what it is. That's what she has. But her long-term memory is fine. If somebody hadn't seen her for a while, they would not know anything. The reason I notice it is, like your last caller talking about, my wife repeats herself, does not remember little things like the time that we're supposed to go someplace, or if some meeting or something. She just doesn't remember. Is there? And again, I've done some research where they've got certain medicines and that, but the medicines, quite frankly, don't work long term, and there's a lot of risk when they do take the medicines. Is there any thing that would help her on a day-to-day basis just to maybe prolong what the inevitable is?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a good question, and I'm sorry you're dealing with this and that she's dealing with this. All the things that we talked about with preventing memory loss, those can still be applied as symptoms set in. So a good diet, exercise, and especially engagement. So what that means is being around other folks and talking to other folks, and really maintaining social connections and activity. I think that those are all important things. You can speak with your doctor about whether or not there might be special medicines for her that might work. And like you already are aware, there are different side effects and different medicines for different symptoms. But I would speak to your doctor about that.
A quick follow-up now. We spent a lot of time at Aarp talking about isolation in a wide variety of ways, and just how it can really impact your mental health, your physical health, your relationships. Can you go into that just a little bit more about the importance of engagement, and how would you define isolation? So for somebody out there wondering whether they may be isolated and that's a problem, how would you define that?
Sure, yeah, and in fact, this is one of those risk factors for dementia that only recently has been appreciated, and there are studies that actually show that people that have a small social circle or don't have any interaction with folks outside of the home are at much higher risk for dementia. So engagement, meaning having a social group, friends that you play cards with, or a church or a club, volunteering, those sorts of activities have been shown to be associated with a lower risk of dementia. So very important, to fight the loneliness and get out there and be engaged.
I mean, I would just say in reaction to that, I mean, I live in a very small state in the Northeast, a very rural state, very few people live there. A lot of the folks that I represent in Vermont we're the second oldest state in the nation. They live in the same house they've been living in for a long time. At this point, they're probably living by themselves. So what we're trying to tell people is there are things like small public libraries, senior centers. It is also about figuring out ways to get up and get out and go to places for a congregate meal, for a game of cards. So for those of you out there that are thinking about this, think about the people in your life that are living in more isolated situations, because then you've got to address things like they may not drive, so somebody's got to go get them. So isolation becomes a very complicated problem that way. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I would also say that AARP has offices in all 53 states,
right.
And we offer a lot of activities for people to get involved in. So either workshops to learn something new. We offer free movies in many places where people have that opportunity to go out and connect with others who maybe have similar interests to them. And of course, our advocacy work. I mean, that's a great way to just learn something new and really dive into some very deep issues and keep your brain really, really engaged. So I would encourage folks who are maybe struggling with a little bit of isolation to seek out their AARP office in their state and find out what they have to offer.
Okay. Now, phone lines are open, 877-283-7570. But let's go back to the phone lines. I believe, are we going to Georgia and Kathy? Kathy, do you have a question for us?
I do have a couple of them. I'm wondering if some of the brain supplements that are commercially available would help.
Okay.
Brain supplements. So there are a lot of companies that are selling products that are touted to help with brain health. And the fact of the matter is that most of the things that we know can impact brain health, we get from a good, healthy, balanced diet. And so that Mediterranean diet that you guys talked about earlier really gives you the critical nutrients that you need. And so there's not a lot of evidence that supplements are helpful for preventing dementia, and sometimes they sell them for quite expensive. So I think speak with your physician about it, but I personally don't have any that I would recommend, as being effective.
Okay. How about we go to Illinois? Belinda from Illinois. And Belinda, before we take your question, congratulations, you're a winner as well. So how about a question for the doctor?
I'm curious as to what would be identified as possibly the top 5 to 6, 7 best vegetables and fruits for optimum health. I've read about this over time. I recently read an article that said watercress tops the list. I've read, of course, broccoli. But I'm a senior Olympian, and I'm attempting to get back post-pandemic, not totally, I understand, into my activity, and I want to optimize as much as possible what I feed my body.
All right. Any suggestions on that?
I think all vegetables, especially green leafy vegetables, are awesome. Kale, that sort of thing. There's been a lot of research about the different vegetables, and I would say go on to the NIH website about healthy aging. There's a National Institute of Aging website that gives lists of all the different types of foods. And so that's what I would try. My favorite vegetable is actually chicken. So, but seriously, there have been a lot of studies, and I would go to a resource like the National Institute of Health.
Guess I'm all right because I've learned to like Brussels sprouts.
Those are great.
Very trendy.
Okay, okay. Speaking of,
You got somebody on the phone right away?
well, we do, but
No, go ahead. Let's go to that.
okay. Well, we're going to trend to Iowa for a minute.
We love Iowa.
How's that? I don't know. Maybe Judy enjoys Brussels sprouts, but Judy, you've got a question for us.
Yes, we're wondering how do you guys feel is this very hereditary? My husband has a sister that's getting it pretty bad, and we're just sort of concerned about it, and just wanted your ideas of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So it is true that in some cases, dementia like Alzheimer's disease does run in families, but it's actually only a small percentage of all of the Alzheimer's that is familial or hereditary. And so just because you have Alzheimer's is very common, and Americans are aging, we're living longer, and it's more common in older individuals. So just because you have Alzheimer's in the family does not mean that you're going to get it or that it's familial or hereditary in your family. So it's really, talk to your neurologist about this, and they can look at the entire family and let you know if there are specific risk factors that might be playing a role in your own family.
Okay, Greg?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back. You talked about kale and green leafy vegetables being really important. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about, I mean, America sort of has an obsession with processed food. And can you talk a little bit more about the links between eating like a heavily processed food diet and links to dementia?
Absolutely. So the issue with processed foods is that there are chemicals in the processed foods that basically lead to increased atherosclerosis and injury to the inside of the arteries that supply blood and oxygen to our brain. And the issue with that is that the arterial damage can lead to little tiny strokes, little tiny areas of the brain that don't get enough nutrients and oxygen, and that basically takes those brain cells away. And we need those brain cells to make the connections that allow us to form memories, allow us to do all the things in the world that we do. And so processed foods in general are not good. They're not healthy for us from a cardiovascular standpoint, and the cardiovascular system is critically important for supplying the brain.
That's the link, okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
And I hear that we are working on ways to reverse some of this as well, so maybe we can come back and talk about that in a moment. We do have to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll announce our second chance winner from August. Now, we still have a carry-all tote to give away, so give us a call. We're at 877-283-7570. Join the conversation. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. Do you know we still have a carry-all tote to give away, and we'll get right to it. How about phone lines before we jump into that? We are toll-free, 877-283-7570, 877-283-7570. But as promised, time to announce our second chance winner from August, and that is Scott J. from Aaron, North Carolina. Congratulations, Scott. And our second chance winner, you've provided your information when you scan the QR code. Your tote is probably on the way. Okay, now let's get to a few more calls and give away that last carry-all tote. That means our next caller is a winner from North Carolina, Jerry. Jerry, congratulations, but you've got a question for us. Jerry?
Jerry, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Jerry, what did you want me to ask?
Yes.
What's your question?
What is the best thing to do for short-term memory loss?
Okay, best thing to do for short-term memory loss.
Well, the best thing to do for short-term memory loss is to make sure that you have a good relationship with your primary care doctor and neurologist, and you got family that can help and make sure that your memory difficulties are not impacting your safety. And so, all the things that we've talked about previously that prevent memory loss are good even if you've got memory loss. So the exercise, the diet, the social engagement, making sure that your blood pressure and your cholesterol are controlled. If you've got diabetes, making sure that that is under control. But really, when memory loss is present, it's really a matter of making sure that you've got the support network, either from family or friends or from your healthcare providers, that ensure that you are safe in the home.
Okay. Jerry from North Carolina is a winner.
Great. Well, right before we went to break, we had a little video piece that talked about hearing loss. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the correlation between hearing loss and either isolation, which can also, as you said before, lead to some, memory problems, or is hearing loss itself tied to memory loss?
Well, the brain is kind of like muscles, in that you've got to use them for them to get stronger and to maintain their strength. And so what that means is that you've got to engage your brain. And one of the issues with hearing is that hearing is really, really critical for keeping our entire brain active. So listening to music, speaking with others, processing what you're hearing, so hearing has been linked to memory decline. And it's one of these things that has kind of only recently been understood, but it has a profound effect, almost as much effect as blood pressure and cholesterol. So if you've got hearing loss, wearing those hearing aids and getting that information into your brain so that you can process it and use it, that helps to preserve memory.
All right, let's go to the phone lines again. We're at 877-283-7570. Let's go to Georgia. Deborah, do you have a question for us?
Yes, I do. I'm trying to turn my sound up. My question is about worrying. I have the tendency, I do a lot of worrying, and I tend to do that when it's time to sleep. And sometimes I wake up with that. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to get a good sleep, because I'm assuming, and you can tell me if this is so, that affects my memory greatly if I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep like I should.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We talked a little bit about sleep earlier, but sleep is critically important for how sharp you are the next day, how attentive you are. And if you haven't gotten a good night's sleep, that really impacts your ability to process the information that's coming in. And so the issue that you've raised with worrying about things and thinking thoughts that are causing stress, it's really something to talk to your doctor with about. And the reason for that is that a lot of times folks that have anxiety or depression, treating those disorders, that can actually help improve memory. And whereas those disorders can cause memory problems, treating them can make the memory normal again. So I would speak with your doctor about that, and if there is a need for treatment, getting that treatment, that may really help with not only your sleep but also memory.
I kind of threw this out earlier before the break, only because you and I had a chance to visit about it. But can we start reversing some of these trends? Because in some of your answers, you're saying if we're having hearing loss, deal with hearing loss. And is that part of reversing some of this?
Absolutely, absolutely. So these risk factors that we talked about, they are modifiable risk factors. And so they not only do they slow the damage that is being caused that causes memory loss, but they can basically help us with our memory issues and yes, reverse some of the issues that we've got.
Great.
Just something that I've heard all night, and I think needs to be stressed, is you've talked about the importance of a strong relationship with your primary care physician. You've referenced that in a number of different areas. And would you just talk about that a little bit more? And maybe that might help reduce anxiety. So like, if you're feeling this way, you would encourage people to go reach out and have a conversation with their primary care physicians?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a lot of the issues that we talked about that can impact memory loss and cause brain injury, they're treatable. And so things like blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol. And so when you start to have symptoms or you're concerned about memory loss, speaking with your primary care doctor can help them focus on making sure that all those things are optimized. And then sleep is another thing that's really important. If you're having poor sleep, let them know they can get a sleep study. And one of our callers talked about having CPAP and using a face mask. Those face masks really make a difference on the quality of sleep that you've got. And quality sleep allows you to be more attentive and alert during the daytime, which tremendously affects your ability to think and process and improves your memory. So all these things, talking to your doctor about those, can help with treatment of some of the things that are treatable and reversible that impact your memory.
So could you talk maybe just a little bit as well about, some minor forgetfulness, cognitive impairment, and Alzheimer's? Is there a differentiation between what's just some cognitive impairment and what's truly Alzheimer's or some other type of dementia?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And everyone has memory loss. Everyone has moments where they forget their keys or they walk in a room and they don't remember why they walked into the room. And so some aspect of not having perfect memory is part of life. But there does come a point where the memory is impaired to a level that is obvious to those around us. And your primary care doctor will do some basic tests in the clinic that will assess your memory, short-term memory, your attention, your language. And if they think that there might be a problem, they might refer on to a psychiatrist or a geriatrician or a neurologist who does more formal testing. And with that formal testing, these are tests that have been given to thousands and thousands of people. So there are normal levels that we are looking for to see how people perform. And so those tests can help us to define if someone has mild cognitive impairment, which is a little bit of memory problems that's not normal, but it's not to the extent that someone needs extra help or is a risk to themselves or others operating vehicles or cooking, that sort of thing. And dementia is a step beyond that, where there are issues that affect a person's safety. So these are all things that can be assessed by your primary care physician first, but also neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists. They're all equipped to address these questions.
What about, we look at aging, and I'll be honest, I'm concerned as I get older that things are going to go downhill for me. Is there an upside to aging?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, the wisdom that you acquire from all the experiences that you've had in life, the friendships and the relationships and family, there are a lot of upsides to having been around and existed and experienced. And I think that enjoying those things and remaining connected, remaining socially engaged with others around you, taking your brain power and applying it and helping others, those are all things that you can do that strengthen those brain connections, fight off the memory loss, and help you enjoy and help others benefit from your wisdom.
So, good news then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm feeling better.
I just wanted to say there's no question about that. I mean, there's thousands of things about getting older which are great. Doctor spoke to sort of many of them, and I think sometimes these conversations, this topic can be difficult to have. Anytime you're talking about any kind of decline in any part of your health, they can be difficult to have. But they're important to have, right? And with that wisdom and experience, we should be able to have conversations like this that ultimately can help. And we heard Dr. Chekhov talk about, some of these things are very treatable. If you have high blood pressure, that could be the problem. That's very treatable. So again, some of it is just being able to take that step to have that conversation, because there are things here that can, and as you said, people are living a lot longer and a lot healthier than they have really in any time in our country's history. And a lot of that has to do with being able to take that step and talk to your physician and they can say, oh, we'll just take a look here, and maybe it is high blood pressure, maybe it's something else. But if some of this stuff is treatable, then you're really in good shape.
Great point there. Okay. Phone lines are open. We've got a line open right now at 877-283-7570. 877-283-7570. And I guess going back to the idea of as we age, is there a magic age out there? At some point we become higher risk for some of these issues, or is it that it can affect anyone at any age?
Well, it can. Alzheimer's disease and dementia can affect folks that are younger, in the 30s even. It tends to be more prevalent and more a higher incidence at later ages. So over the age of 70, over the age of 80, more folks do have problems with their memory, but not everyone does. And many people go on into their hundreds and have, great memory. So so it's not a absolute that as you get older you're going to have memory problems.
Good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Are there some sort of surprising things that might exacerbate some memory issues, maybe like a urinary tract infection or getting pneumonia or, having to make a huge lifestyle change, like moving to a new home or a new town that can maybe trigger some of those memory issues?
Yes. And the important thing is that these sorts of medical conditions like pneumonia or urinary infections, new medications, they're temporary. So again, back to the doctor, let them run through the list of medicines that you're on, check your urine, get a chest x-ray, listen to your lungs. These sorts of things that might take a person who seems totally normal, they can temporarily bring out a lot of different problems with memory and thinking. So that is a great observation and question.
And I've got another one. Sorry, I'm full of questions tonight. Oftentimes family members are the first ones who start to see some of those issues that may be happening. And certainly as someone starts to decline, it's their family that's taking care of them. Can you offer any sort of support for those family caregivers as they're caring for someone who, AARP does a lot of work with caregivers. We're working on issues to help support family caregivers. But what advice do you have for someone who might be caring for someone with dementia?
Well, dementia tends to be a chronic problem. And I think that one of the most important things is as a caregiver, take care of yourself and make sure that you have the support that you need and that you have a respite at times. There are a lot of different programs through churches and community organizations where you can go with your loved one and they can be entertained and you get some time on your own. So I think taking care of yourself as a caregiver is really important because it can be very hard.
Okay, let's go back to the phones. Final call coming from Oklahoma is also our final winner. Kitty, you've got a question for us.
Yes. You said something about socialization being important. I have a really hard time remembering people and places and words, especially as I've got a very great vocabulary, but I can't access it 90% of the time. And I was wondering, would playing games, things like Scrabble and board games or cards, would that help me be able to start accessing maybe more of my vocabulary and more of my memory?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the mythbusters at the beginning of this program was that there are some companies out there that will try to sell you games that they claim will prevent Alzheimer's disease. And that's not really true. But you hit the nail on the head when you started talking about social games and playing Scrabble. If you're playing Scrabble with others and you're engaging with them and you're laughing, we talked about laughter being really important. That's the key. You're engaging so much more of your brain than if you're just clicking on a phone and playing a phone game. It's really that it's that social aspect, that variability that you get when you interact with others. You don't know what they're going to say. You don't know what they're going to say that makes you laugh. That's really important. And so if you can play games with others, you're doing well.
All right, we've come to the end of the show, but before we go, final thoughts.
I think we've hit it all. We talked about food. We talked about sleep. We talked about social engagement, and we talked about exercise and being connected with your provider, your primary care doctor, to make sure that the reversible things that can impact your memory, you get those taken care of. And I think that all those things, you can enjoy a great life.
Great. Greg? Final thought?
Yeah, I'm going to let you talk about some of the stuff that we have. Go ahead. Why don't you go first?
We've got great resources. Yep. We have our Brain Health Resource Center, so aarp.org/brain health. And of course, if you are caring for someone who may have Alzheimer's or some dementia issues, our Caregiver Resource Center is also a great place to get some of those resources to help you on that journey.
Okay.
And I'd just say finally, what a pleasure it's been to have Dr. Chekhov here tonight, because it's so important to be able to talk about this stuff in a way that people like Kathy and I can understand. And if we can remove some of the fear and we can remove some of the anxiety associated with this, it opens up huge paths to move forward. And you can always go to AARP Live, aarp.org/AARP Live. There's lots of resources here on brain health right there.
Okay, that's it for tonight. Join us next month as we unlock getting the most out of your benefits. Thank you for joining us. Have a very good evening.